Good morning. I am Terry Buffington. I am a cultural anthropologist, a folklorist, and oral historian from the Jim Crow South. In the 1960s and 70s, I was an active community member of the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee in my hometown of West Point, Mississippi. The Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee, pronounced as SNCC, like the candy bar, was based in Atlanta, Georgia. Currently, I live in the small agrarian town of Pullman in Whitman County in eastern Washington. Since relocating to Pullman, I have become an integral member of WSU academic and regional communities, particularly in my anthropological work and my commitment to social justice. I am a lecturer in the Department of Arts and Science, Digital Technology and Culture at Washington State University, the Pullman campus. I teach a course that focuses on the oral tradition, storytelling, culture, and social activism. The course was created from the Terry Buffington Papers, dated 1952 to 2014, gifted to and sponsored by the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill, Wilson Library, Southern Historical Collection. It has approximately 750 items and is 2.5 linear feet of shelf space. The digital collection contains my anthropological work with Black men who came of age during the 1960 civil rights movement. They were influenced by the late Ralph Featherstone, John Buffington, and Stokely Carmichael. John Buffington, the late John Buffington, my late husband, was the Community Freedom Summer Project Director in West Point, my hometown. I'd like to talk a bit about uh, the 1964 Freedom Summer Project, also known as the Mississippi Project, launched by American civil rights activists in June of 1964 to register as many African American voters as possible in Mississippi. As you know, Black people in the state had been prevented mainly from voting since the turn of the 20th century due to the barriers of voter registration and other Jim Crow laws that had been enacted throughout the American South. Now, Freedom Summer operated under COFO, COFO, that would be the Counselor of Federated Organizations, and it was a coalition of the Mississippi branch of the NAACP, the SCLC group that was based in Atlanta, Georgia, under Dr. Martin Luther King and Reverend Ralph Abernathy, and of course, SNCC. The Freedom Summer Project was financed by Friends of SNCC, which consisted of a group of Jewish women housed at the University of Chicago. Under the direction of the late Bob Moses, SNCC field secretary, and Bob was the co-director of COFO during the summer project. Moses had been a school teacher in his native state of New York. He, as many other volunteers, had been professionals and gave up their security to come to Mississippi. Some of the volunteers that came to Mississippi just took a sabbatical from school for a year. Some stayed gone as many as 2 years. They left the school because they saw an urgency to come to Mississippi and help this very human nature uh, to help Black people gain some form of citizenship and political power. And as a matter of fact, there were approximately 700 Freedom Summer volunteers who came from all across the United States and abroad. We had several people in our project in West Point, Mississippi, who were from the UK. These young people came to Mississippi to work with the Black communities. They set up freedom schools. We had libraries. We set up community centers, and they implemented mock literacy tests. As an outgrowth of my anthropological work in May of 2024, my colleagues, Professor Ruth Gregory, an award winning filmmaker in Kawasi Buffington, executive director of the Terry Buffington Foundation, we spent 10 days in Mississippi and Tennessee documenting former activist experiences before, during, and after the 1964 civil rights uh, movement. We did this in collaboration with Mississippi Valley State, a historical Black college located in the Mississippi Delta, under the guardianship of Professor Al White, who is the Department of Communication Director down in Ada Bena, Mississippi. Ruth Gregory film, White Folks Trouble, is not just an anthology. It is a collaborative effort aligned with a central theme. The digital film that we produce is a platform where students, and not just students, but partners, could pair with upper class humanities scholars and mentors from the Washington State University Department of Arts and Science. I am excited about the possibility of participating with Humanities Washington. I think such an initiative will represent and present our unique opportunities to explore and share our human experiences through film, discussion, learning, and reflection to enrich local and national public discourse. I think such programs as Humanity Washington encompass a wide range of disciplines. For an example, language, literature, history, blues, jazz, and gospel music, all of which incorporate humanistic content and methodology. The approach reflects our diverse heritage, tradition, history, and highlights the humanity's relevance to current national circumstances. Such collaboration, I believe, are a testament to the value we place on diverse perspectives and the power of collective action in advancing our understanding of our history, our culture, and our world. The Mississippi Project is not just about fostering discussions, but about sparking transformative conversations about Mississippi rich history and culture. The humanities also foster informative information about current events in regional and local communities. We focus not just on the pivotal 60 Mississippi Civil Rights Movement, but on the individuals who's part of it, their stories and their lived experiences before, during, and after the 1960s. Such a project is not just an academic pursuit, but I think it's a powerful tool for effecting real changes in our communities and nation, inspiring hope for a more enlightened future. Such partnerships as the Washington Humanities are not just a dedication, but a testament to our unweaving commitment to our nation's intellectual and cultural advances and the potentials of the humanities to shape an enlightened future, a more perfect union, if you will. I firmly believe that the humanities are not merely a subject of study, but also a God, I can't talk, a pivotal tool for recognizing and addressing critical issues in our community and nation. Our community to our commitment to advance human understanding and apply this newfound comprehension to the world most pressing challenges underscores the urgency and significance of the humanities and will tell the stories of those who impacted a particular community but were not part of the state stories in today's world. I think the humanities can serve as a compelling call to action, reminding us of the urgency and importance of the humanities in our society and offering hope for a more enlightened future. In the Terry Buffington papers, there are 21 oral history collections of Black men who came of age in the 1960s who are my peers. They are talking about life in the Jim Crow South, how they lived in two worlds, a white world and a black world. Taken from the first person account, draw very heavily on the oral tradition and the art in my classes. My students are allowed and are guided through research, editing, filming, writing the scripts, and getting a real understanding of the difference between primary sources and secondary sources. When you work with primary sources, you're working with raw, unfiltered materials, which means that no one has come through and changed it or interpreted a way that perhaps it didn't really needed to be interpreted. So the primary source is what researchers use when they want to, say, write a book, or students of cultural history or historians. I was telling my students the other day that In the 1960s and 50s, during the days of segregation, me and my cousins, we were 10, 11, 12 years old. We would be every summer, our parents sent us to Chicago, which, as you know, the 1940 Great Migration, where droves of Black people went north looking for a better life, trying to escape Jim Crow and racial discrimination. It's debatable whether or not they were able to do that in a total sense. However, my parents would drive us 82 miles from West Point, Mississippi, down through a little town called Winona, Mississippi. Winona, Mississippi is the same little town during the 1964 Democratic Convention in Atlantic City, New Jersey, where the Mississippi Democratic Party tried to unseat the white delegation from Mississippi. This convention was held in Atlantic City, New Jersey, where Mrs. Hamas did her famous speech that she was sick and tired and that she wanted to be represented just as the white Americans had representation. So taking this from the primary source, I try to show the students how to research and how powerful the voice is. We use Dr. King as an example. We use the current administration, our current president, and how he took the oral tradition and became the president for the second time. Not only did he do it, but if you go back into the 60s, you had George Wallace over in Alabama that successfully used the voice to round up and to rally up his base so that he could run for the president of the United States. Unfortunately, Wallace was shot in Maryland on a campaign tour and he never really recovered, leaving the governorship to his wife, who became the governor of Alabama for the next 2 years. So here we are in 21st century America, and we are dealing with some of the same issues. It is so important, I think, for humanities scholars to dig into our past so we can understand the future. I tell my students, if you don't know American history, you don't understand social justice, the cause and effect of these mass movements. I begin to see now a movement across our country where things are about to be changed, maybe brought back to some level of normalcy. Who knows? As Betty Davis said in All About Eve, the film, hold on, it's going to be a bumpy ride. In terms of how I interact with my audience, there are several ways. If I am presenting a PowerPoint, I allow the audience to engage me in dialogue by asking me questions. If I do a talk, I do the same way. It's the same concept. Sometimes I might do workshops where I'll present a scenario and allow small groups of people to collectively problem solve whatever the situation may be. Sometimes I use this method in my class. Collective problem solving is where a group of people get together and all of them come to the table and share their ideas. It doesn't mean that one is right and the other one is incorrect. It just simply means that you have an opportunity to express your opinions. As I tell my students, all of us have an opinion. It's just like having teeth. We all have an opinion, and all of the opinions are just as valid as my opinion or someone across the room. Normally, in these circumstances, students find a way to come to a mean in a collaborative effort and present their findings. That's the beauty of working with firsthand primary sources. I always give them something that happened, a scenario, for an example. I gave my students an assignment to pretend that they were in 1970 Alabama and had just graduated from the University of Alabama, where the Montgomery bus boycott was going on. How would you approach the city and how would you use the modern day technology to go in and try to record and work with the community people and see what you can do to help facilitate, if you will, the changes that the Black community was asking for? It was rather interesting what some of them said about going to jail, because when you are a protester, you run the risk of going to jail. I remember one time we were in jail, hundreds of us, down in Jackson, Mississippi. I never forget it. And it was a whole lot of money to get us out of jail. You see, the difference between the 1960 movement and the movement that we see today, we were well organized by grassroots organizations. We knocked on doors. We sat with people and we taught them how to read, how to take the literacy test that was required in order for you to vote. And so it's a combination of a lot of things. And I think that we've come to a point in the history of our country that we need to go back to basic grassroots organization. We were in jail down in Jackson, as I started to tell you. I will never forget it. The late Cindy Portier and Harry Belafonte flew into Jackson, Mississippi with $15,000. They got us all out of jail. Well, in my community in West Point, Mississippi, when we were arrested, your parents would put their houses up. Other people in the community would come forward with the bail. So we knew how we was going to get out of jail. We didn't have the technology back in those days as we do now. Back in the 20th century, communities were more intimate, if you will. America was a community, if you will. Now with technology, everything is done technically and you don't get to see people. In fact, you don't even know who you live next door to. So it makes it impossible somewhat to amass a large protest and ensure that everyone land on their feet, if you will, and not be in jail. I remember one time we were demonstrating downtown West Point and the police officers started to snatch our signs off. And just as they got to a guy named Mike Roos, who was from Massachusetts, his father was a congressman. I'm sorry, not Massachusetts, they was from Wisconsin. And as the police officer stepped over to Mike to snatch his sign off, the police officer fell dead at our feet. Now that was a hair-raising experience. So my late husband, John Buffington, was the project director for Freedom Summer, and he called Congressman, and the Congressman flew into Memphis, Tennessee, and took a car down to West Point, Mississippi, which was about a 2.5 to 3 hour drive. And I never will forget what he told his son, Mike. It was Freedom Summer. We had just lost the 3 civil rights workers down in Neshoba County, Mississippi, just right down the road from where I grew up. He said, son, you can stay here during this rest of the summer, but I don't want you involved in any more demonstrations. That's how volatile and how dangerous and how courageous these young people were. Now, I want to say one final other thing, and then I will end this video. Had it not been for the Black men that's in the Terry Buffington collection, Dr. Martin Luther King and the SNCC volunteers, Buffington, Stokely Carmichael, they could not have gotten into the Black community. Our people were terrified. Back in those days, you could come up missing and no one would ever know what happened to you. And so, had it not been for people like Carl Rice, John V. Brown, in fact, Carl Rice was the first person to go to jail in West Point. There was a disturbance up at the high school, and the police was called. The students blocked the police car where they couldn't get in and out of the area, and Carl Rice went to jail. But we had a mechanism, I believe Mr. Jack Jackson, who was a businessman in the community, bailed him out. So there's a whole lot of stories that haven't been told. And history doesn't do the civil rights movement justice. There was more people than the late Congressman John Lewis, Dr. King, Rosa Parks, and Fannie Lou Hamer. There was a Fannie Lou Hamer in every Black community in the South, and it still is to this day if you would just go out and look for them. There's another woman that history has overlooked, and that's the great Ella Baker, which organized the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee. Ella Baker graduated college from Shaw University in Raleigh, North Carolina in 1927. She went on to New York City to discover knowledge that she had not been exposed to down in Virginia, North Carolina, where she was from. She worked with the Communist Party for a while. She also worked with with the NAACP in the New York office, where Maya Angelou met her. In the 1940s, Miss Baker was a strategist. She traveled the South, all through Mississippi, Georgia, Tennessee, Alabama, and Louisiana, Arkansas, planting the seeds for the 1964 Freedom Summer Project. Miss Baker is considered as the modern mother of the modern day civil rights movement. And I tried my best to teach her work and who she was and what she was about. She had connected herself to SCLC and Dr. King. So she went over to Alabama in the 1958 during the Montgomery bus boycott. And it was Miss Baker and Bryant Rustin that organized the March on Washington and the Montgomery bus boycott, Freedom Summer Project. That was Ella Baker's work. Ella Baker believed that we young people should not come up under the umbrella of SCLC, where Dr. King wanted us to fit. She said, no, these young people need to have their own autonomy. And that was the birth of the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee, SNCC. Thank you.